Let's face it, business technology is frustrating and complex. So how do you make sure it works for your team? To make IT right, start the discussion at go-domain.com. You're listening to Discussions by Domain, a podcast for business leaders. Our discussions may be with people you've probably heard of before, but the majority of our guests are in the trenches, professionals like you and I, with the same challenges and struggles of keeping up in the Northeast. They're implementing strategies, overcoming hurdles. They're leading the fastest growing businesses in our region. My name is Anthony DeGraw, Director of Partnerships at Domain Computer Services, and the host of this show. When I'm not talking with business leaders, you'll hear stories from behind the scenes of Domain and the ups and downs of our own growth journey, as we intend to take over the world. Just kidding. Well, maybe. Let's get into the show. Welcome to another episode of Discussions by Domain. My name is Anthony DeGraw, and we have Mr. Vitale back with us to continue on with this account management customer success playbook. Today, we're going to touch on two topics: how to identify at-risk clients, what to do for them, how to handle at-risk clients, and change that almost negative into a positive. So, Kevin, welcome back.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
Let's jump right into it. What do we need to do from this account management playbook to identify at-risk clients?
Right, so that's a good question. There's actually a lot that goes into it because at the end of the day, if you don't know that somebody's struggling, you're going to be in bad shape. When you find out, it's going to be way too late in the game at that point. There's a few red flags is what I like to call them. But one of those, the first one is the easiest one. It's just when they stop using your service. When you see them not using your service or product how it's being sold, you know you have an issue, because it's just straight up they don't don't see the value in it basically anymore.
They're not even asking for your help.
Exactly. And it's funny because that actually, a lot of people think when clients have issues or concerns, it's necessarily a bad thing all the time, but it's actually good because you know that they're engaging with you at least. When you don't hear anything, that's when you're in the most trouble.
Yeah. Any examples of that from your past that you can bring up?
Absolutely. I mean,
and how you potentially handled it.
Exactly. At that point, it's your job to be engaging, to get them back engaged. So ask the right questions. Go back to the drawing board, and that kind of leads to another point: is sometimes you have to go back to the drawing board and say, is what we're doing working for you? Because maybe it's not. Maybe it was set up wrong initially.
Correct.
Which is fine.
Yeah.
You just have to figure out what those expectations are, and sometimes you have to reset them so things kind of balance out a little bit.
Yeah. So the way I think about that is you may have to pivot, right? You have to maybe pivot the services, but I think the most important thing that you just mentioned there is continuing to have your finger on the pulse of that relationship.
Absolutely.
And if you do that and all of a sudden you notice something's out of whack, having the ability to reach back in, hey, I'm here, and how do I potentially pivot my services so you can still continue to get value out of them?
Absolutely. That's exactly your job, is to stay engaged. Keep your finger on the pulse.
This next one I think is very important too, because in the world that we're in today, people are holding jobs a year, 3 years. It's a short amount of time. And your point here is that when the point of contact, the main relationship that you have changes, and that new person comes in, how do you get their buy-in?
Yeah, so I think it's important to understand first and foremost that person that's coming in has their own connections. They have their own previous relationships. Yeah. You don't know who they worked with, what they worked with them on. Maybe they have a favorite, vendor, whoever it might be, product, whatever it might be. So it's your job to show your value to that person as if they don't know you, because they don't at all, right?
Yep.
So it's your job to do that as an account manager, because they have no exposure to you previously. I don't care how smooth the transition was, even if somebody left and somebody came, they would have no way of knowing how valuable you guys are, because they weren't part of the sales process. They weren't part of the onboarding process.
Yep.
So it's really important to keep an eye when that happens.
Yeah, another thing I would add to that, I think some value too, is that as they come into their new role, sitting down with them potentially face-to-face, hopefully at least over a phone call, but more preferably face-to-face, and understanding in their role, because these are usually people higher up in the organization, they probably came in with some thoughts and ideas throughout their interview process on how they could help the organization.
100%.
So how does your getting to know them and getting to know the product, how your product fits into their overall strategy for the firm or for whatever the case may be, and helping them, whether it be an IT issue that came up throughout their interviewing process that they knew how to handle, how can you deliver that solution to them?
Exactly, and that goes exactly back to the expectations, right? So some people, if they want to come in with new ideas, they want to look good. And it's your job to make them look good.
100%.
Other people come in and they want to be left alone because they got all this other stuff to worry about, right? So you need to know that, and you need to execute on whatever it is that they want.
Yeah, 100%. All right, lack of communication and engagement from the client. So you touched on that initially. Tell me a little bit more, though. That's different than I'm not using your service. That's the communication and engagement when reaching out is potentially very poor.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So if you're only hearing issues, concerns, then you know something's wrong right away, because any healthy relationship is not always just going to be somebody yelling at you. You know, so you want to make sure that that's not the case either. And again, it just goes back to it's your job to figure out what it is they want and how you can provide it better to their standards. Figure out their standards, right? Some people, like I said, some people don't want all that much engagement. That's fine too. But if you don't know that, if you're not listening and you don't know that, you're going to be off for the whole thing, and it's only going to get worse. The one thing I've seen a lot of people do unsuccessfully is just act like it's fine. You know, in a role like account management, just if you don't hear from them, I'm going to assume everything's fine. I promise you it's not. It's literally the opposite of that. Because what does that mean? That means either they don't care at all, or they're looking for other people to do your job. That's potentially what that means. So don't ever feel like that's the case. You know,
love it. The final thing you have here, which I was going to just bring up, but on your last point to help solve it, but results internally that are dropping or being delayed. So meaning you're not providing to the quality that you want. Maybe you're missing some things and whatnot, which, and I hope you get into it, is all about, we here gauge everything on a customer satisfaction survey. Every time we do something, that end user gets that. And that way we at least have a way to measure the pulse of how we're doing and what we're actually getting accomplished. So talk about this a little bit.
Yeah, so at the end of the day, you can't be dropping the ball a lot, right? Because you need to know if you are, it's your job to go hold people accountable or raise your hand. You don't have to go and hold everyone accountable, but you have to raise your hand and say there's a problem here. So how do you know that? We use a CSAT, which is obviously customer satisfaction, and it's super important to have something like that in place, because if you don't, you're not going to have any idea if the client's not engaging with you and you're not engaging with them constantly, right? So it's your job basically to make sure that if these scores are falling off, or this engagement is lacking, that you step in and say, I'm raising my hand here. And that's actually just kind of leads to the next point. You have to have some kind of process in place when you raise your hand to, okay, what do we do now? That's super important, because you could say something's wrong and then it ends and the same outcome is going to happen. It's not going to be a good one.
100%. And I think the CSAT can also be used in another form, which is your point of contact doesn't like too much communication, right? So they have this personality and this is how they handle it. And then what can end up happening is, because they're not using you so much, potentially their employees are though, what you can do is you can use that CSAT and the potential positive experience and the records of all of that to then go back and communicate, hey, so-and-so, I see we're doing pretty well. We have this. Is there anything that's concerned that you're hearing internally? Anything more we can be doing for you?
Absolutely.
I just want to check in, but so far this is the pulse that I have of the organization and the service we're providing.
And actually to that point, you'll see a lot of the time it's your problem could be either an organizational problem, so they don't like the services you're delivered, or it could slightly sometimes be a personal problem. But you're not going to know that if you don't have your finger on that pulse and you don't see, okay, the score is dropping off every single time this interaction happens. You'll be able to identify it and then address it, and then you move on.
All right, so those were the 4 areas that you can identify at-risk clients. Why don't we touch on now the areas, what to do for them? Where do you even start?
Right. So it's kind of hard to say, but you want to start with knowing. You have to find out from the very onset of this whole process what is a quick win, right? So what I mean by a quick win is what has been hurting them. What's a pain point that comes up constantly? Because you need to have your finger on the pulse, and if you see it, you see this comes up constantly. Fix that problem first, right? Yeah. Don't try and fix everything. Fix that problem first, because you know that means the most to them. So you
it's like the whole domino concept, right? Is like that first domino, getting the momentum on that first domino to get the rest of the things to fall, right, is the most important.
100%.
And that's kind of get that quick win, get the momentum headed in your direction, and you're off to the races.
Right, because I talk about this with you all the time, but you don't want to be climbing back because you don't want to be on the defensive. You don't want to be on the offensive either. You just want it to be a relationship that gives and takes. You know, it's healthy.
Correct.
That's where you want to be.
100%. You mentioned here reevaluating. You have retainer. You could say engagement. You could say fees. Blah blah blah. But what do you mean by this?
Right. So I touched on this a little bit before, but sometimes you have to literally go back to the drawing board. Yeah. So I know you guys are paying this. Do you find this useful? Is it valuable to you?
Yeah.
Because if it's not, and that's not aligned in the first place, what you're dealing with something you can't fix because it was wrong to start with, right? Exactly. So sometimes you have to look at all your documentation, see what happened in the sales process, and say, okay, was there any miscommunications here? Yeah. Is this something you thought you needed, you might not need now? And clients actually appreciate that more than anything because it's that whole not reactive, it's kind of a proactive measure.
Yeah, and I think you're showing your flexibility when you do that. Hey, I'm not just here to lock you into something for 3 years, right? It's like, no, I want this to work for you. Tell me how we can get to that place.
And it's not the first measure, right?
No.
But it is a measure if you need it. You need to know that is an option.
Correct.
Too,
Yep. All right, next thing, resetting expectations. So we talk about this a lot here because there's a lot of things from the information technology, cybersecurity standpoint where things need to be done in a certain way. It may be not in conjunction with how a potential company operates or something because things just need to get done, right?
Yeah,
and it's not always mandated by us. It could be mandated by Microsoft, Amazon, whatever. Your kind of hands are tied. But you need to go in and let them know, like, this is the issue. We need to reset expectations.
100%, because that's that miscommunication, right? What do you have, and what are we not doing for you? What are we not delivering on, right? Yeah. So if you don't know those two things right off the bat, then sometimes it's going to take a little more alignment. You could say, listen, you don't have this agreement with us. I know you need this, but you don't have that.
Yeah.
So what can we do to get you there? You know, and sometimes that means another service, but a lot of times that just means refining the services you have.
Yep.
So it's not about making money. It's not about losing money. It's about what's going to work, right? You could be making all the money in the world off a client, but if they hate you, you're not going to get referrals. It's not a good operating procedure as a business. You're going to have headaches. You're going to have stress in the office. Yeah. So it's all important, all that stuff aligns.
Super important too. And talk about it too from the standpoint of just internal processes, right? Like you have certain processes set up on the way you deliver services, which may be in opposition to the way potentially they run their business or what they even expected.
Exactly.
Hey, I expected when a new user came on, this is how it went. Okay, and explain how you would handle that.
No, 100%. Right? So a lot of the time, you'll run into issues where this person works very differently than the person next to them, right? So they expect this person needs you to respond in minutes, right? And that's fine because this is important. But you didn't know that this was important to this person. Yeah. So this is your job to know that. Yeah. So you want to make sure, and you have to just get ahead of it. Say, hey, can we have a call? Can we talk? Can I come out? Let's come out. I just want to make sure that what we have right now is going to work for you. And if you see it's not, and in this case, at this point, you see it's kind of not already, You say, how are we going to fix it? Here are my thoughts. Don't go into it with no thoughts or opinion. Say, here are my thoughts. What do you think? Do you think that works for you?
Yeah.
And they'll say yes or they'll say no.
And I think the biggest thing you hear, I don't even know if it's a point, but it should be, is go out and see them in person.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
100%.
Because getting out from behind the email, getting out from behind the phone, and actually sitting down with somebody, getting to know them getting to know you, it humanizes this entire thing.
Exactly. It's easy to yell at somebody over a phone or to talk to somebody you don't see looking at you, but when you get in front of them, you understand a lot more, especially if you've adopted these kind of soft skills, these emotional skills.
So important.
100%.
All right, final point on here. Provide value on the company level. Tell me what that means.
Yeah, so basically, it's your job, again, that just to show that you care. So we talked about this a little bit before, but promote your clients. Yeah. Promote your clients, not as them as an individual, but their entire company. So again, they just won an award, or they're looking to get this sponsored. We have
an example from yesterday. One of our clients reached out to us that we really respect. They respect us, and they asked us to. They were putting on a big event. Over 120 people were coming to it. They were looking for some sponsorships. It happens to be the end of the year. We happen to set our marketing and advertising budgets a year prior for the year ahead, and basically we're capped out. We're set for the rest of the year. There's only 3 months left. Yeah. But we were like, you know what? This means something to us. You mean something to us. This is important for you. Let's go find some money for you.
Show you care. Yeah. Show you care, because you, in all reality, you do. Yeah. You really do care. So show them that you care. Yeah. Be where they are. Meet them where they are. You conferences. You're constantly going to conferences, right? Yeah. Meet people there. Show them that you are where they are. What you care about, what they care about.
It's a great example. We recently onboarded a new client, and we met, I don't know, 6-7 months prior to the engagement being solidified, and it was very simple. Their sales guy was at a conference. I was at the conference. We didn't know each other were going to be there. We found each other. He was looking to market his services. It happened to be his target audience. It wasn't my target audience. I happened to have a mentor that was in the stands within the audience, and was able to. They were looking for his services and make an introduction.
But that's good business. That's a good friendship. That's a good relationship. It's how it's done. That's what makes people feel comfortable. It makes sense.
And that happens by being out there, by looking, by listening, being on the channels, like truly understanding those, going to events, being a player in the industry, in the marketplace, understanding all of that, and understanding where it's almost these serendipity moments that happen. You don't even know they're going to happen. They do happen, and you're able to provide value in another way.
100%. It's like, this is like a friendship, right? It's business, but it's just like a friendship. What are you looking for in a friend? Somebody that's going to hold you accountable, right? Yeah. That's resetting expectations. Somebody that's going to listen to you. Yeah. Some people just need that. You need somebody to listen to you, so show them you're listening. Yep. And care. Somebody that cares. You're going to call them at 3 a.m., they're going to answer. Yeah. You care. Yeah. That's like this is a 9-page document. I wanted to write in big bold letters, like care. Yeah. Because that's all it is, But it has to be outlined in a process, because there are steps you can take in certain things, but really at the end of the day, it's a lot like hospitality, care.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is you get so caught in the weeds, you're getting hit from so many different angles, and this kind of goes out the window a little bit, because you're just trying to live, survive, and do your thing, and it's kind of just a resetting of expectations back to like, all right, what's most important here?
Exactly.
What makes the most sense?
Exactly, 100%.
All right. That's it. So today we talked about how to identify at-risk clients and what do you do for them. I think Kevin keeps dropping some value. We got another one of these sections to go. I'm looking forward to it. I think this has been really good. I really hope that whether it's by providing this document to you is valuable, or by sitting down, whether it be account management or customer success, account executives, and understanding, going through these points with them. I think a lot of people understand this. I don't think a lot of people execute on it well, and I think this could be a great way to educate not only internally but externally as well.
And actually, just to that point, I was talking to you about this not so long ago, but this is one of those things where when you love a business, when you really like a company, because I look at all different businesses, you look at all different, but you like businesses that are successful, right? But when you really, really, there's an attachment to a company, it's always from an aspect like this. It's always from we care about our people, we care about our clients, like actually care about them. We're taking care of them well.
Yeah, you know? and I'll even bring up the example we were talking about. So the example we were talking about was HubSpot. Domain engaged with HubSpot, I want to say a year and a half ago now. And every time we get on the phone with their customer success individual, happens to be in California, different time zone, never met him face to face. Every time we get on the phone with him, he provides us value, we learn something new, and we go out and, I think this is the key, talk about HubSpot to the marketplace.
Absolutely.
We are doing all of their selling without them doing it.
Yeah, because it works, because mention what works, mention what they're doing it well. So talk to them, learn,
and by the way, as a resource, you should go to HubSpot and go to their blog and look up all of this stuff. They have in-depth stuff on all of this. But yeah, great resource, and they're doing what they say they're going to do, and it is providing exponential value. I think you told me. And more. I think Kevin has HubSpot stock, so this isn't anything like that. But you did mention they're a $500 million company. And I think it's Salesforce is a $1-point-something billion company. And we were blown away by what we got from Salesforce, by what we got from HubSpot.
100%.
And boom, now look where we're at.
Value, right? At the end of the day, value. Value is everything.
Kev, I wanted to touch real quickly with you on two more questions for this episode. Communicating negative information, right? So you've gone back, maybe they came to you with an issue, you've gone internally, you're trying to solve the issue, and you know what? You got to come back with some stuff they're not going to want to hear, right? Yeah. How do you deal with communicating to the client negative information?
Yeah, this is obviously very tricky. That's it's going to happen. It's going to happen all the time, to be honest with you. But basically, nobody wants to just know that they have a problem and that's it, and you just be on the receiving end. Nobody wants that either. So you have to be kind of proactive in how you talk about it, right? So if they say, we want this service, and you say, we don't have this service. You didn't do anything for me. You just made me mad. Yeah. That's what you did, right? Yeah. So you want to say, I know, being that we don't have this service, what do you think? How could we help with this? And actually, even better than that, you have a plan on, we don't have this service, but actually I think we can do X, Y, Z. Does that work for you? And then get the acknowledgement at the end, because that's a really important thing. And there's no quicker way to frustrate somebody than just listening to them, their anger, and you not doing anything about it. Or even just you saying, sitting there not saying anything is not helpful. Yeah. So just know that. So be proactive with that anger or concern. You have to care, but you have to go a step beyond caring and figure out what might work for them.
Yeah, and our CEO, Rashad, kind of just did a presentation on this, but by saying, I think it was part of the story brand concept, but by saying, I understand, also can sometimes frustrate people, because it's like, nah, you don't. But by getting on the client side of the table, right, and saying, Microsoft Outlook is sometimes very frustrating. I completely get it, right? Like you're almost agreeing with the issue with them, and you're like, yeah, that's frustrating too. Right. Let's go see how we can work through this.
Because once you confirm with both of you that this is an issue, I'm not telling you this is not really a big deal. Yeah. That's a terrible thing to say. Yeah. You're going to say, I know it's a big deal. This is how we might be able to help. Yeah. So I get it. Trust me, I get it. It's annoying. This is how we can help. Yeah. It's a big difference.
You're getting on their same side. You're agreeing with them, and then you're saying, basically, I'm going to go fight for you.
100%. And that's what you have to do. You have to do it.
Yes.
You can't just say these things, because I've seen this happen, and it really is where things go really wrong. Is you just a client expresses concern and it ends with you. It will come back to you 10 times what it ended with you last time. So. Don't ever do that. Be proactive with it, just like everything else.
100%. And then we get to the final question here, which is, all right, now we're at an impasse. We've done what you just said. We've gone back. We've tried to find situations. We can't come out with anything, and we're at this impasse now. And we now need to go communicate this with the client, and we need to handle it.
Absolutely. So again, the one word more than anything else is listen from the onset, because you're going to know exactly what it is that bothered them. So make sure you have that very clearly written down. what it is that they didn't like.
Yes.
Right? Acknowledge that, and now it's your job to go back to them and say, how can we make this better now? We've determined that this isn't possible. How can you tell me how we can make this better for you?
Exactly.
You have to. There's no other way to go about it, because you've run into this wall of we physically, or just whatever the case, can't do this for you.
We can't deliver this for you.
So how do I make this better for you now?
Yep.
Because we have to move on from this. So how are we going to do it?
100%. And another thing I think too, and you mentioned this before, is like you kind of have to have a plan too. Mm-hmm. So we've reached an impasse. I know I'm going to have to go communicate that impasse to this individual. Mm-hmm. But before I've jumped on that call, I'm trying to think of an example, and one's not coming to me. Mm-hmm. But before I've jumped on that call, I've potentially researched maybe a few other providers, maybe a few other softwares, whatever the case may be, where you can point them in the right direction, and you have a couple options for them. And you've now come to that call of like, look, I can't do what you need me to do. It's just not something that we do. I have, how do you think we can resolve this? Right. And by the way, if you don't have an answer for that, I've thought of 3 ways we could potentially solve
because it's still your job to give them guidance, right?
Yeah.
You're still, because you've put yourself in that role where you're still the advisor, and that's a good spot for you to be in, because I know we can't do this for you, but here's who can. We've done the research for you. We know they can do it well.
Yeah.
Please do.
And you're
earning credibility that way.
You're earning credibility, and I think you're also exceeding expectations at that point. Because I think that all clients know that in their business, when they can't get something done or they can't actually deliver what you're asking for them, they have the potential to put up their hands and say, I can't do this.
Right.
So when you show them through your business that you actually went above that, and you went and said, like, let me do a quick 15, 20 minutes of research to see who does solve this problem.
Yeah.
Let me give you that information. You just saved them probably 2 hours of research time on trying to get done what they're trying to get done.
Exactly, but it's that whole proactive element of it, right? You didn't just come and say that's that. That's that. Sorry, you're going to leave mad, and that's the best I could do. Yeah. It's like here's where we can go. I've done the research. I know this is a fit for you.
Yeah.
So I would suggest going here. Tell me what you think. Keep the conversation going.
Yeah.
Tell me what you think about that once you've had the opportunity to go through this.
Yeah.
It's good.
100%. And they're going to happen. These conversations are going to happen. You can't avoid them. You got to know how to address them. You just heard it from the man himself.
just like hone those personal skills. It's a lot of people are very talented. Just make sure you're always like consciously listening to those little triggers, those undertones of people when they have a concern, or maybe they're being nice, but something's wrong. Just use all that stuff. It's really helpful to do that.
So thanks. Another episode in the books here, and looking forward to having you back on.
Absolutely. Thanks, man. It's a pleasure.
To ensure that you never miss an episode, subscribe to the show in iTunes or your favorite podcast player. This guarantees that every episode will get delivered directly to your device. To help us get the word out, share with a friend, leave a review, and check out our discussions on the web at go-domain.com/podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.